Hi, I'm Travis Colenutt, and I'm one of 3 hosts of Cutscenes, a video game movie podcast. It's a podcast where we discuss video game movies and TV adaptations, regardless of whether or not they're any good. For today's episode of Side Quests, I'm here to talk about what's probably the most forgotten and ignored game in the Metroid franchise, Metroid Fusion. Metroid Fusion came out in 2002 for the Nintendo Game Boy Advance and was developed by Nintendo Research and Development 1, the same team that developed the Super Metroid for SNES. Fusion's a side-scrolling action shooting game with platforming, environmental puzzles, backtracking, all of which are staples to the Metroid games. The story is a sequel to Super Metroid and its prequels, where the intergalactic bounty hunter Samus Aran successfully eliminates the Metroids, a predatory alien organism that threatens all life in the galaxy. Fusion starts with Samus getting infected by a mimicking parasitic organism called the X, while doing research work for the Biological Space Laboratories, or BSL for short. Samus nearly dies, but is treated with a vaccine made from Metroid DNA, which are the natural predators of the X. When she recovers, it's found that an explosion has rocked the BSL, and Samus is sent to investigate. All gameplay takes place on the BSL, where Samus discovers that the X parasites have taken over the station and are mimicking and killing all life forms on board. Samus's mission is now to stop them before it's too late. I absolutely loved this game. I consider myself a big fan of the franchise, having played nearly every Metroid game, yes, even the universally hated ones like Other M, and I think Fusion might just be my favorite of the franchise. While many might think that a true Metroid fan has to have Super Metroid or Metroid Prime at the top of their list, there's always been something special about the atmosphere, story, gameplay, and borderline horror of Fusion that has brought me back again and again to replay it. Previous Metroid games focused on Samus's isolation on a strange world, giving you free reign to explore in a mostly open world, where Fusion breaks that mold by having you take on specific missions and tasks given to you by your ship's AI. While this makes the game more linear, it really allows for terrific set pieces and strongly scripted action sequences. The SAX, which is an X-parasite that has infected the discarded pieces of Samus's original power suit, is wreaking havoc on the BSL and is actively trying to hunt you down. Every encounter with the SAX is tense and terrifying. You have no means of defeating it, and you always have to be prepared to run if it spots you. I don't know if moments like this could have been made possible in previous Metroid games, especially the 2D ones, without introducing some form of linear gameplay progression. Fusion uses so many visual and audio cues to continue building tension, and it gives me that sense of dread when I play it, but in a totally good way. The SAX, for example, leaves permanent destruction in its wake, and areas previously visited are destroyed and changed. Like I mentioned before, being given missions to progress the story is super linear, but I find the game successfully tricks you into thinking you have free reign. You're frequently needing to backtrack, find hidden passages to progress, and explore the ever-changing BSL. As you unlock more weapons and power-ups, and open more security hatches, areas previously blocked to you start becoming available. This really gives me that sense of exploration like past games, without leaving me feeling aimless and wandering around forever without a purpose. Gameplay-wise, Samus is much less floaty than she was in previous games. I really feel like the platforming was so much stronger because of it. The jumping's precise, and Samus feels like she has actual strength behind her movements. The controls are tight, and Samus has way more mobility than she did in previous games. Enemies once killed, yet again, give you health and missile ammo, so the game never feels too hard. There is a bit of a difficulty spike about midway through the game that really helps up the challenge, and that kind of coincides with the story as the X are getting more powerful, and it keeps that looming threat that they pose always at the back of your mind. The bosses are challenging, but they feel way more engaging this time around. Instead of just spamming projectiles, I feel compelled to learn the attack patterns and strategies, especially early on when you have way less resources to work with. It just feels like so much care was taken by the developers to engage the player in boss fights and in its level design. The farther along you progress the story, the less the game holds your hand. There's an increasing need for you to solve puzzles on your own and to find areas without the ship's AI leading the way. And while there's always a mostly scripted path that you have to follow, You definitely feel at moments that you're breaking the game, so to say. You restore functionality to weapons without being directed to, and you open up security hatches without authorization. The more independence you gain, the more powerful you start to feel. And slowly, the AI starts seeming less and less friendly to you, and it's starting to feel like there's maybe unknown forces working against you. This is, of course, the Federation that wants to weaponize the X. Surprise, of course they do. Fusion intelligently takes that sense of isolation that seemed like it was missing at the beginning of this game, and subverts your expectations. Isolation and dread grow and are built throughout this game's story and its gameplay, and it's just so much more effective this time around. Fusion takes so much of what came before and does something new and exciting with it. Game sequels can sometimes be stuck on rehashing the same old ideas and gameplay mechanics, because if it isn't broke, then why fix it? But Nintendo's always been great at wanting to try new things with their IPs, and Metroid Fusion does a terrific job of keeping true to the franchise while delivering something completely unexpected. And honestly, that's probably why this is my favorite game of all time. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Side Quests. If you want to hear more from me, you can find me on Twitter at Travis Colenutt, or you can listen to Cutscenes, a video game movie podcast. Our first season ran from August 20th to September 24th, 2020, and we have more seasons in the works, so please give us a listen. Once again, thank you so much for listening, and happy gaming!